somewhat casual conversation happening there during that joint press conference. CBS News foreign affairs and White House correspondent Margaret Brennan is at the White House for us. Margaret, I have to ask you, a little bit that stood out to me is that President Trump said he can, quote, live with a one-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Now, that would buck really decades of U.S. policy. What are people talking about?
Yes, that would totally be a reversal of U.S. policy that has been supported by both Republican and Democratic administrations as a way to get both sides some security, safety, and parity, though obviously the Palestinian West Bank, Gaza, and broadly the occupied territories have been reduced significantly by the amount of Israeli settlement expansion, something Donald Trump as president has started to raise concerns about, as he did in that press conference right there. But we didn't hear a clear vision or view or stance from the United States. That is significant. Up until now, the White House, no matter who was in it, tried to set the parameters for what a peace deal and a vision would look like. Today, you heard President Trump say he supports peace, but he doesn't quite describe how to get there. And in fact, by saying something like it depends on what both sides want, that makes an assumption that both sides have an equal voice and power at the table. What the previous administration, the Obama administration, found fault with when it came to the expansion of territories under the expansion of settlements, I should say, under Prime Minister Netanyahu, is the fact that they said that didn't show any seriousness when it came to actually negotiating a deal. And on the Palestinian side, you've seen a lot of political weakness from Mahmoud Abbas in the past years and no promising successor to him, in part because of internal political fights.
Well, that's along the lines of what you're talking about here. Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump going back and forth, and really, it seemed like almost light conversation between the two, much lighter than what we've seen in the past. Obviously, the last 8 years, there was a lot of tension that we saw within the White House when Benjamin Netanyahu would visit. But even joking, Benjamin Netanyahu saying he's a good negotiator, it's the art of the deal. How do you see that playing out, even in terms of a worldview here in Israel itself?
Right. Well, it's an important point because this is a press conference that is watched around the world in various capitals with very different views, but who are used to looking at the United States to set the global agenda. And what you heard President Trump say is, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to set the terms for a peace deal here. You guys figure it out, but we will work behind the scenes. So we're maybe just starting to piece together a strategy for deal making that they're trying to match up with the diplomacy here behind the scenes. We know Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and Jared Kushner, President Trump's son-in-law, met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for dinner last night. So it sounded like a little bit of that conversation might have been revealed in the course of this press conference as they made reference to a broader peace deal in the region. That sounds to me like something that's been floated in the past about Saudi Arabia and other regional allies brokering a broader deal, not just one between the Palestinians and Israelis directly themselves.
Interesting point. Margaret, before we let you go, I want to switch gears just a little bit. President Trump was asked about General Mike Flynn, who stepped down as National Security Advisor. I want everyone to listen to what he had to say.
Michael Flynn, General Flynn, is a wonderful man. I think he's been treated very, very unfairly by the media, as I call it, the fake media in many cases. And I think it's really a sad thing that he was treated so badly. I think in addition to that, from intelligence, papers are being leaked, things are being leaked. It's criminal action, criminal act, and it's been going on for a long time before me, but now it's really going on. And people are trying to cover up for a terrible loss that the Democrats had under Hillary Clinton. I think it's very, very unfair what's happened to General Flynn, the way he was treated, and the documents and papers that were illegally, I stress that, illegally leaked. Very, very unfair.
Margaret, this seems like a roundabout way of talking. You start with the National Security Advisor resigning and you head into the Hillary Clinton campaign, the Democrats. What's the latest here?
Well, it was an unusual response, but we're glad at least the question was asked in some form or fashion, because that's been on the top story for days now. And I think the way the president responded shows that he feels that scrutiny is unfair. But if you get to the heart of the matter, President Trump is the one that asked Michael Flynn to resign. That is what the White House said was a decision that came from the commander-in-chief himself. The media didn't force him to do that. If he is in charge of this White House, as they consistently say he is and forcefully say he is, it was his decision to ask for that resignation. So deflecting by blaming the press or blaming the intelligence community for leaking things is changing the narrative a bit. What they are troubled by here, and what he was, I think, hinting at, was this question of whether that intercepted transcript of the phone call between Michael Flynn and between the Russian ambassador, that has been seen by some journalists. That has not been seen by CBS News, but it has been used in the Justice Department's case when they went, Sally Yates, who then was acting Attorney General, went and told the White House counsel, look, you have evidence here that that conversation did happen. They did talk about sanctions, but Michael Flynn said this didn't, and we think that puts him and you in a position of weakness here because it makes him vulnerable to blackmail. Now, whether or not there was something within that conversation, we don't know specifically what was said, but we know that Justice Department officials thought it was something the White House should be aware of because they thought there was a risk to President Trump's administration. And so this answer that the president gave, I think, showed his feelings, but it didn't respond to the facts.
All right. Still a lot to sort through. Margaret Brennan, thank you so much at the White House for us today.